Hi, everybody. Mike Verta. So I want to talk today about this concept of finding your own voice as a composer. It's this thing that is oft repeated in our community, and the truth is it's repeated and said and held up as though it's this really crucial component, when the truth is it's next to irrelevant and probably something we shouldn't spend as much time nervous about and fretting over and trying to avoid, because all it ends up doing is causing us to second guess ourselves and compromise our music. And here's my case to say that. First of all, all of our work begins from an imitative place. We hear a composer, we hear a piece of music, we hear a harmony, a sound, something that we like, and we think, God, I wish I'd done that. Oh, I wish I'd done that. What is that? And we want to learn to do that so we can put it into our own work. We're inspired by something, and we internalize it, we embrace it, and we want to be able to use it, maybe even develop on it, all those sorts of things. On some level, so much of what we do begins with this admiration, begins with this imitative core, and always has. And we're fighting an uphill battle if we're going to try to deny that as the soul of much of what inspires us. But the truth is, even though we have this in common, the more your influences are obvious in your work, the more you're going to get criticism or praise. And it depends on whether or not who you're imitating is popular or not. For a long time, people have told me that my work reminds them of John Williams. Now, John Williams' music is not especially popular these days. So what follows with that is a lot of criticism. Well, you're imitating, you're a John Williams wannabe, you're a pastiche composer, those sorts of things. But 95% of the people who will say that are trying to sound like Hans Zimmer. I mean, that's just, if what you're doing today, if you love Hans Zimmer's music, and by the way, I do dig his stuff, if you're sounding like Hans Zimmer, but I think it's great because he's very popular right now. Nobody bats an eye on that. So what should you do? Should you reject what you like? Should you reject what you want to do, and then beat yourself up trying to come up with a new sound? My advice: absolutely not. Absolutely not. You see, because of the popularization of his music, history has been largely rewritten about pastiche derivative composer John Public Domain Williams, like he was once called, and still is in some circles. He used to catch all kinds of flack for it, and seemingly had a hang-up about it for a while, actually. And certainly if you have any knowledge of the symphonic repertoire, all of John Williams' devices can be traced to their sources, all of them. Every harmonic thing he does, every orchestrational thing he does, it is not hard to find out. That's what I've been studying. I mean, so it's, that's what I went to find out. Well, where did he get this stuff from? But John knows something, and history has, I think, vindicated this position, which is that in the final analysis, it doesn't matter. Some of it doesn't matter because people don't really know the repertoire anymore, but some of it doesn't matter because in the end, amongst all of the people that'll hear your work, very few people, if they're inspired by what you do, if they like what you do, if they embrace what you do, very few people are going to deliberately, actively shut down their feelings and decide not to like your music simply because it reminds them of something else they like equally well. People don't do that. People who are focused on things other than the music, maybe, but there's a handful of them, a statistically irrelevant handful of them. Most people will embrace good stuff, and they don't really care where it comes from. And so today, what makes John Williams' music unique? What is his own voice? Is obviously something greater than the sum of its parts. It's the ways in which he embraced and understood the things that inspired him, the ways in which he studied them and internalized him, that inescapably came out in their own unique way, without him having to spend all of his time and energy fretting and trying to figure out how to be unique. Music is a language. If you have something interesting to say, you don't have to invent an entirely new language to say it in. If you listen to somebody give a speech and you like the way they organize their speech, you like the way that you like the particular sorts of words that they choose, you sort of like their vocabulary, you like the way, say, that they mix up colloquialisms with real formality, and you think, you know what, I want to be a good speechwriter, I'm going to incorporate those elements. Still, the most important thing is what it is that you're saying. And the more you understand about your influences and your inspirations, the more inescapably it will be your own thing anyway. Let me tell you something. If there are people out there who are bad Hans Zimmer imitators, people who are essentially doing Hans Zimmer impressions. And then there are some people out there who have made such a study of it, that they start to understand where Hans was getting it from when he was writing it. They start to internalize it. And then you can find people who speak in that language, but they have their own things to say. So that's the caveat, is whatever it is that inspires you, whatever it is that you really dig, get into it, so that you're not just an imitator, so that you're not just a pastiche composer doing an impression, but that you've actually mired yourself in the patterns and in the essence of what it is, such that you get it. And once you get it, you can control it however you want. And that is ultimately what you hear in, say, John Williams music. That's what I think we should all be striving for. Instead of focusing on the end result, which is, well, just make sure at the end it sounds like nobody else. Have it be of something substantive. And if your roots are clear in that, most people don't care. They don't care. They care about whether or not your music is effective. Well, it's unique, but it's not effective. It's not going to make a difference. It's not going to make a difference. Well, it's really effective. It's one of my favorite songs, but it sounds like Jerry Goldsmith, so I'm not going to listen to it. You don't have to worry about that. And yet that's sort of how it's presented to us. Like, well, you can't work if your music sounds like somebody else's. It's just not true. It's just not true. Otherwise, every other score that's out today wouldn't sound like Hans Zimmer. I mean, it does, and it does. So don't believe a word of that. If along the way you are one of those handful of people in history who ends up doing both things, creating something totally unique and yet utterly compelling, congratulations. But that's a very difficult target to hit. And in the course, you may not be honing your skills in some of the most important areas. I mean, how are you going to create the thing that connects with people in a unique way if you can't connect with people in an ordinary way? Now, all that being said, struggling with trying to find stuff that's unique, I think is actually a very healthy and normal part of the journey, the evolutionary journey of being a composer. When I was first starting out in commercial work in my late teens, I went through a period of time where I couldn't let any two chords be predictable. I couldn't do the simplest chord progressions because I would just be, everybody's heard that. Everybody's heard 1 4 5. I can't do 1 4 5. I mean, I beat myself up. Every chord change, everything had to be different, had to be unique. It had to be something nobody'd ever heard before. Blah blah blah. And every once in a while that would generate an interesting progression, but a lot of the times, all that generated was a lot of frustration amongst people because they had nothing to anchor onto. They had nothing to hold on to. They had nothing that was familiar and accessible. It can get overly intellectualized and overly academic. So in the end, it became about, well, listen, could I write a good piece that didn't have to have an entirely new set of chord changes in it? And that's actually harder than not. But once you're in control of it, well, then you can make choices. So it's the same thing. If you love Hans Zimmer's work, if you love John Williams' work, a John Williams imitator, and there's lots of them out there, when they're not actually deliberately lifting John Williams chords and melodies, like where they change a couple of notes, or like, I'll put a woodwind run on it, then they don't know what to do. They haven't embraced it yet. They haven't understood it. They haven't gone back and listened and studied and figured out where it comes from. And it's the same people who do, Hans Zimmer impressions, where you can hear they're like literally using Hans Zimmer's figures, like the exact notes over, because in the end, they're not really sure what makes it what it is. That's imitative. That's what you have to avoid. But not by throwing the baby out with the bathwater, not by getting away from it, but by going deeper into it. Why would you not? You love it. You love it. It's what motivates you. And in the process of it, you're going to be excited about every time you come up with a discovery, every time that you come up with something that really sounds like who you like, but isn't who you like, that's going to be a moment. That means you're starting to understand what really makes it what it is. And in the end, if that leads you to music that other people like, that is compelling and contributory, in the end, That's all that matters. History is an evolutionary, ongoing, organic process. And just the way people don't talk about John Public Domain Williams anymore, they did. But after this many scores that are beloved and known, well, it's now he's the template. So rather than obsess about all that, focus on having something compelling, interesting, inherently exciting, and inspiring to say, and then let history do with it what it will. So that's my hopefully burden-lifting, pressure-relieving message for the day. Leave the finding of gimmicks and unique and different tricks to people whose messages don't have the endearing, substantive, lasting quality of truly great work.